Welcome back to the Master Your Money podcast with me, Marini Jackson, your guide to mastering credit, building wealth, and creating financial freedom. Let's dive into today's episode. So, this episode, at the time of the recording, is in the month of June. And although at the time of this recording, the official start of summer has not begun, I wanted to talk about a very, very important topic that a lot of people don't talk about for the summer, and that is our emergency preparedness strategies. I actually have a cousin who worked for our state uh, a few years ago, and she worked in the emergency planning or emergency preparedness department, and she had stories, and anytime they had events she would give us little gifts, like if they had extra I'm thinking as I'm speaking, first aid kits, things like that. She would always make sure she gave us one. But being prepared for summer emergencies is vital. I'm not sure where you live in the country, but in addition to summer bringing our vacations, I live in an area where there are hurricanes. We get severe thunderstorms, sometimes power outages, and definitely extreme heat, flooding, and unexpected expenses. And the goal when we talk about emergencies and preparing for them is never to live in fear, but is to prepare wisely so that an emergency just becomes an inconvenience and it doesn't become a financial crisis for you. So, why the summer preparedness matters is most families spend months planning their vacations. If they're going on a cruise, they've planned their outfits, their shoes, whatever themes, they bought the luggage, the whole 9 yards. But a lot of people or a lot of families spend very, very little time planning for emergencies. And some of the common summer surprises that you can experience include things such as hurricane evacuation costs, extended power outages, emergency home repairs, vehicle breakdowns during road trips, medical emergencies while you're traveling, having lost wages due to weather related work disruptions, and having increased utility bills due to the extreme heat. But when you have that preparation, it actually protects both your safety and your finances. So, the first strategy is you want to build a summer emergency fund. And with your summer emergency fund, this is going to be your first line of defense. So, you want to have a starter goal. If you have nothing saved for emergencies, and everything that I named is emergency, so I didn't say a sale at your favorite store, some shoes. These emergencies sometimes can mean the difference between life and death. So, again, this will be finances specifically earmarked for emergencies. So your starter goal is you want to save $500 if you're someone who's beginning. Save $1,000. This will give you some basic protection. And then also you can save 1 month of expenses and set that as your next milestone. So, a quick challenge you can give yourself is to save $25 per week. And that way you'll have $300 saved by the end of summer. If you want to double that to $50, you'll have $600 saved by the end of summer. And if you want to double that and save $100 a week, you'll have $1,200 saved by the end of summer. And an easy way to do this is to make sure that you automate your transfers into a dedicated savings account so that preparation doesn't have to rely on your willpower at all. Just set that withdrawal date on the date of your payday, and you can just set that. Don't forget it, but just definitely set it so it's automated. Another thing you want to do, and this is near and dear to me because I do live in an area where we are on alert. We're not in fear, but definitely on alert during hurricane season, which is the month of June to the end of November. So that's a good chunk of time that we are in hurricane season. But you want to, number two, create a hurricane and severe weather fund. Excuse me. And I live in a coastal area. It's a region that's prone to storms. You want to create a specific sinking fund for this. And some of those potential expenses that you have will include hotel stays, any fuel that you'll need for evacuation. You'll need water and food supplies. If you have a generator, you're going to need fuel for that. Any type of emergency repairs that need to be made, and temporary housing as well. So your monthly target for that will be anywhere between $25 and $100 per month. And you want to label the account your storm preparedness fund. And this is going to create some financial peace of mind before the weather alerts begin. Now, where I live in the United States, usually the beginning of hurricane season, it's pretty quiet. I shouldn't say quiet, but we, for the past several years, have not had any alerts in the early summer. It's more so late summer, early fall. So for instance, if I'm saying I want to get started with this, I would start saving right now. At the time of this recording, start saving so that, again, by the time the end of the summer comes around, you do have funds available just in case you do have to evacuate. And there have been several years back to back that my family has had to evacuate. And being that we're in the coastal region, there are other states near my area which also get those same evacuation notices. I will say for the state of Florida, almost every year there is a named storm that has been hitting that area, unfortunately. And I do recall one year when my family evacuated, essentially everyone from the state of Florida was driving up through a major highway which comes near my home. And when my evacuation zone was notified, we have to evacuate. Because I have a mother who is not a spring chicken, definitely love my mom. We knew that if power was out for multiple days on end, being that it was the summertime with the extreme heat, that would not be conducive to my mother's health. So anytime there are evacuation notices, we leave. My family does evacuate. And in this particular year, I'm thinking about a lot of people, most of the state of Florida was evacuating. So we decided, my family, we decided we're going to leave early in the morning. That way, if those who were sleeping at rest stops, things of that nature, they were, some rest stops we passed, people were still sleeping. Tons of cars were there. And we were able to, get some headway before we reached a lot of traffic. But if we didn't have a plan in place, those things would have caused a problem. Like if I would have not filled up my car with gas, there have been instances where there's been no gas at gas stations because everyone in the area plus nearby neighboring states were evacuating. So these are some very, very important things. And if you get stuck in traffic for several hours, you don't want to run out of gas. And if anyone has an electric vehicle and has had to evacuate, I'd love to hear from you in the comments because that's always something on my mind. I know, some people make the case for electric vehicles being very economical, being that they don't use gas, but I'm not sure how that would play out during an evacuation situation. But let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. But everything that I mentioned, having the food, the water, the fuel, those are all real things that I've personally experienced, and making sure that, financially, that you have funds to be able to cover, emergency shelter, things of that nature is very important. Now, the third strategy is you want to conduct a financial emergency audit, and you want to ask yourself a few questions. The first is, if an emergency happened tomorrow, do I know where my insurance policies are? Do I know my deductibles on those policies? Do I have emergency cash available? Can I access my bank accounts online? And do my family members know where my important documents are located? Now, that last one is extremely important. It's good to know, for you to know where those items are. But let's say that the emergency happened with you as a person. For instance, if you became unconscious and had to be taken to an emergency room, for instance, will your family be able to speak on your behalf? Will they know where policies are located? If they had to still manage your finances while you had a personal emergency, can they do that? Or do you have a trusted friend if you don't have a family member who can do that on your behalf? Some important documents that you want to make sure that you have. You want to have digital and physical copies of these items are your driver's license, your passports, birth certificates, social security cards, insurance policies, your mortgage or lease agreements, medical information, in addition to the medications that you take, and your emergency contacts. And you want to keep these in a waterproof folder for those physical documents. Now, I saw something, it was a few months ago on the Weather Channel, and I want to briefly mention it so that myth can be dispelled. One of the meteorologists was doing a story, and I guess some people felt that if they kept their important physical documents in a dishwasher, that would be helpful. You need to be able to grab things quickly and place items where your family, your loved ones, if they need to put their hands on it, that they can definitely logically know where items are. A good thing is you want to keep it, if you want to put all of that in a large Ziploc bag, you have a waterproof folder, and then put everything in a Ziploc bag, and make sure you communicate with your family, with your loved ones, with your friends, a trusted friend, so that if anything ever happens and you had to leave, that again, they can get their hands on those documents. Another strategy, and this is something that's very important as well, is you want to prepare for power outages. And many families really underestimate the financial impact of losing power. I live in a total electric home, and I know growing up, the home that my family lived in, we at least had we had a gas water heater, and we had a gas stove. So growing up, there were times when my childhood home, like the power would go out, and my mom, one of her first instincts was, let me grab one of my power bills and call the number on the power bill. Like, a lot of people, they really don't pay attention to their bill, but pay attention to your bills, and particularly for the power, excuse me, there was a number that you can call if your area ever experienced an outage. And my mom would always call, and basically the automated system would confirm, after her putting in basic information, that yes, the power is out, yes, we're working on it, or technicians will be clearing down power lines, or whatever the case would be. And it would, at times, it would give us an estimated time frame when the power will be turned back on. Now, during the summer, it's hot. very hot where I live. So having no power and it's extremely hot, and I'm telling you this as an adult, I remember as a child this happening. So just keep in mind your seniors, your children, things of that, or people who may have compromised immune systems as well when you think about power outages as well. So some of the things you want to make sure that you have in your home for your emergency supply list would be flashlights, batteries, portable chargers, backup power banks, a first aid kit, non perishable food, bottled water, and cash. And you want to keep enough supplies for at least 3 days. So, this is extremely important because if power goes out and you can't get to an ATM to get cash out, and in my area, when my family evacuated and came back, we saw in some areas where businesses had signs that they hand wrote on the door saying they only take cash. So if you didn't have cash and you had a debit card, if the power's out, that's really not helping you. So card systems will fail. The ATMs are not going to be available. And then, as I said, businesses and in particular gas stations, they were only accepting cash in those instances. So definitely have cash on hand. I know everyone is so used to tapping using Apple Pay, Zelle, Venmo, various Cash App, various electronic means to give, or I shouldn't say give, but to pay for things, that you want to keep that in mind. Okay, so moving on to strategy number 5. This is extremely important. I have plenty of stories. I'm not going to share them all, but you want to review your insurance coverage. Summer is a great time to review your homeowner's insurance, your renter's insurance, your auto insurance, your flood insurance, and your life insurance. And one question you want to ask yourself and your provider is, would this policy realistically help me recover financially after a disaster? And what many people actually find out is they have some coverage gaps only after they file a claim. That's the way they find out. I have had colleagues, like one gentleman, he lived in the state of Louisiana prior to accepting the position he had. He's since left the company, but I recall sitting with him at a luncheon and everyone was just introducing themselves. And he was telling the table that he's from the state of Louisiana, he was a military veteran, and essentially the state of Louisiana, the home policy companies, insurance companies dropped everyone's insurance because they knew that that was a hurricane prone area, and if homes got damaged, then of course with the policies they would have to pay out millions of dollars. And I was outraged. Of course I said, oh my gosh, that's so unfair. My jaw dropped because I'm like, what in the world? But even states like California, a few years ago there were some wildfires, massive wildfires that destroyed millions of dollars worth of homes. And unfortunately, for some of those individuals, they didn't have homeowners insurance. And the reason was because it was so expensive, from what I've been told. Recently, or I should say, in a few months ago, even in my state, there were some wildfires. And I spoke with some individuals who live closer to where those wildfires were happening. One lady, I just was asking her if she's okay, whether she was impacted, and she told me no, but someone else she knew was impacted. So making sure that you have annual reviews of your policies with your insurance agent is extremely important, because you want to know now rather than later when you're in a crisis situation whether or not you have coverage. Okay, Strategy number 6, you want to ensure that you are protecting your income as well. And your income is your greatest wealth building tool. And you want to ask yourself, what happens if I miss a week of work? What happens if my workplace closes temporarily? Do I have paid leave? And do I have disability coverage? So, with each of those, I know everyone who's listening probably has a different situation, whether you are self-employed or entrepreneur, whether you are employed full-time, part-time. You want to know, like, do I have vacation built up that if I miss a week of work because I am evacuated, am I going to get paid? And is this going to impact my personal household and my personal finances and my ability to pay bills? What if your workplace closes? I know not even just summer, but snow is very unusual where I live, and basically, some businesses will close, and you want to know, okay, what happens if the place where I work closes? Are you getting paid for that, or are you just absent, no pay? And if anything happens to you, for instance, if you fall, I know some jobs have like short-term disability, long-term disability. You want to, of course, check with your workplace, your HR department, speak with someone about your benefits. And if you need to make adjustments, whether you can make them now or during your company's open enrollment period. But you want to aim to build a buffer month where 1 month of expenses is saved and available. And that single month can prevent debt when emergencies occur. So that's our big goal, is making sure that we are not creating additional debt for ourselves when we have financial emergencies. Another thing you want to prepare, and this is strategy number 7, is your vehicle. Summer travel increases the likelihood of roadside emergencies. Driving today on the highway, I was coming back home from church, and I saw pieces of tires. And I know those have come off of people's vehicles. Maybe about 2 weeks ago, I was talking to my sister on the phone while I was driving in the car, and literally I smelled like burning rubber. And my first instinct was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with my vehicle? But I realized it wasn't my vehicle, it was a vehicle 1 or 2 cars ahead of me. Basically, that person's tire was coming off of their vehicle, or what was left of their tire, and it got down to where it was just the rim. And they didn't quite make it to the exit. They made it to the side of the road, thank goodness. But those things happen. It could happen, I should say. So you want to create a vehicle emergency kit. You want to make sure you have jumper cables, a tire inflator, first aid supplies, water, a phone charger, and your emergency contact list. Now, I'm going to give this as a disclaimer. I have a relative who basically says that's what I have AAA for roadside assistance. During the summer months, or if it's bad weather, things of that nature, yes, get your roadside assistance. That's very important. However, if the roadside assistance can't get to you for numerous hours on end, I personally strongly recommend having these items in your vehicle, so that if it's something small where you just need someone to give you a jump, you can get that done. I shouldn't say get that done, but have that not be an issue where you have to get towed. I do have a colleague who has a jump box. One day was sitting outside, had my car. It wasn't fully cranked on. I had my windows down. This was back early in the spring when it was actually nice and not super hot outside. But I didn't realize that with me having the ignition on, that it was draining my battery. So long story short, at the end of the day, when I went to fully crank up my car, nothing happened. And fortunately, this colleague had a jump box. He just came over, plugged his jump box up to my car battery, and less than 30 seconds later, my car turned on, or my battery started. So have these in place, because you can prevent that towing bill. Like if someone doesn't have AAA, by preventing that one towing bill on or your roadside emergency can actually save you thousands of dollars. So again, yes, have the AAA, have all of that in place, but these are some basics that you also need as well. Okay, next one, strategy number 8, and we're coming down to the wire, is you want to make sure that you plan for extreme heat. As I said, I live in the South. I live in a part of the country where it gets extremely hot. I know other areas have relatives and friends that live in states like Texas that get temperatures in the hundreds, and that's the normal during the summer. But extreme heat can drastically increase your utility costs. You're going to have those that your air running during the summer. Some of the things that you can do to help manage those costs and reduce those expenses is have a programmable thermostat. And you can also make sure you're changing out your air filters on your HVAC system. If you're someone who lives in an apartment, your apartment complex does that, or they're supposed to do that on a routine basis. But if you are a homeowner, you want to make sure you're changing out those filters, those air filters. If you have any leaks, you want to seal those leaks, those air leaks. Use blackout curtains. That's another strategy. And run your appliances during cooler hours. And one friend of mine, oh goodness, this was many years ago. One thing she told me, this isn't not about utilities, but she said during the summertime or when there's extreme heat, she basically gets her gas during the cooler times of the day. So similar with your appliances, run them when it's cooler. So you want to create a utility sinking fund as well, because with a lot of companies, they're going to charge more because it's going to be a lot hotter. You want to set aside $20 to $50 monthly to help cover those spikes. So, and this is going to help absorb that without disrupting your budget. Now, I've covered a lot. There are 2 more strategies that I want to cover in next week's episode, but I hope that these tips that I have given so far have been a great help to you and helps you to prepare so summer, you can enjoy summer, you can take your vacations, you can plan for emergencies and for it not to be stressful. But let me know in the comments, out of 1 through 8, which of those strategies that you've heard so far really resonates with you, or if you have taken action on any of those or are taking action. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if you have a friend or a family member that you want to join you in this journey to your financial freedom, feel free to send this podcast to them as well. But until next time, remember, we don't just manage our money, we master it.